All right, so fireside chat, the role of AI in data-driven healthcare technology. And when we talk about artificial intelligence, that has been in our imaginations even before computers could do anything more than just some math right out there. And it took a whole room back then to do it. So today, when AI can perceive patterns too complex, even for our brains to comprehend, its insights can actually show us most of the times, how the future is going to unfold before it even happens. So a niche, a new popular technology, a new way of communication, a consuming habit from an upcoming generation, I should say. It's pretty much a superpower. Let's quickly invite our discussants. We'll be joined by Rajiv Sikka, the CIO from Medanta, along with Sreeji Gopinathan, the global CIO from Lupin. Well, the chat will be moderated by Sudipta Ghosh, partner and data and analytics leader, PwC India. And Sudipta, with that, it's straight over to you.
Thank you for joining this very interesting fireside chat on the topic of the role of AI in data-driven healthcare technology. As you'd already know that AI has got uses in multiple facets and different sectors, but one particular sector which is going to be very critical in terms of the demand which we have in our country and in terms of the reach which it has going forward, that will be healthcare. And this is no longer just an aspiration, it is probably already happening in multiple places in terms of organizations who are using AI to drive their, say, patient engagement, customer engagement, efficiency improvements, a touchless and contactless way of delivering things, building resilience in the supply chain. Multiple things are happening using AI-enabled solutions to drive a significant benefit in terms of how organizations are operating and how they are being more effective going forward. It is probably also very much needed for a country like India, where we need to reach out to multiple people. There is a huge amount of demand, and it is mostly a supply constraint situation, where it means that use of technology, use of digital assets, and of course enabled using AI is going to make a huge difference going forward. So there is a social angle to it as well, in terms of how do we make a bigger outreach to a large number of population in a country like ours. So in that kind of a context, it will be great to kind of hear your views, Rajiv, in terms of the very exciting work which you are doing, both in terms of the use cases which you have been implementing using AI-enabled solutions, as well as your experience of how the take-up has been in the organization and what kind of feedback you have received across the board. So over to you, Rajiv.
Sure. So let me take a very practical live example. We all know about X-rays. X-ray is one of the easiest way to carry out. It is non-invasive. It is very economical also. And that's why it's always a frontline tool to do basic diagnostics. Now, what happens is that while X-ray take less than a minute, but its reporting take a lot of time. And somebody has to go through the scan and has to report it. Now, what we do is that we also run India largest CSR program, which is called TB Free Haryana. It has been extended to 5 states now, which is where we operate hospitals. Now, what it means is that where our van goes to a remote area where we do X-rays. Van has a built-in X-ray machine. Modality is there, and X-ray film comes. So, doctor who's accompanying in the van has to see roughly between 160 to 200 odd X-rays to figure it out who the probable TB patients are. Please understand that these TB patients are very poor patients, and TB is very highly communicable disease in the country, kills more people than the COVID, but unfortunately poor people disease, so not seen predominantly in any media. Now in this particular case, doctor has to scan multiple hundreds of such X-ray. Meanwhile, the patient is gone because he's a daily wage labor. He's not going to stick around. So what we do is that we need someone to help us in diagnosis of these X-ray. So what we did is that we implemented an AI program. It's a long story. It did multiple iterations before it went to the proof of concept to production. Now in this particular case, X-rays tells as soon as the modality throws a film, it simultaneously throws a report saying that this is the probable TB. So in this particular case, we realize that there are only 40 which are coming up as a probable TB. So doctor is just focusing on those 40 odd X-rays, out of which 20, 15, whatever it comes, he's focusing on those patients. So it's a fantastic use case. And just imagine that, if we can replicate it across the country, wherever we have problem of radiologists, and we all know that kind of shortage we have. You rightly said, this is a supply gap. So this is what it is. Now, in terms of adoption, obviously, when you talk about Medanta Hospital, and if you tell a doctor to read an X-ray instead of going through a report, he'll say, I'll read the X-ray because, back of his hand. It is not for Medanta type of hospital. It is not meant for high-end hospital where you have top-notch clinicians who know the job. It is for those centers where we have serious lack of specialties and specialist doctor, where a GP or a general practitioner or a simple medical officer is treating 200, 400 patients with, one standing on one foot throughout the day. Those kind of AI tools will help him a lot, like diabetic retina, which means that you have eye problem because of diabetic foot, and so many, so and so forth. The ones which are not a function of the lab test, the one which are a function of the subjectivity of the clinician looking into the images part. So I'm of the opinion that AI is bound to stay, and this one use case took some time for us to adopt, but now clinicians are fully clear because they can't afford to send, if 5 vans are going, I can't have 5 radiologists going to these 5 vans, leaving the core work at the hospital. So I'll take a pause, and I thought I'll share
Yeah.
this use case.
No, I think it's absolutely fantastic, Rajiv, what you shared, because I think you brought up two very important aspects which I would like to highlight. The first thing is the scalability and repeatability of doing it at scale at a price point which will be affordable to a large cross section of the population who may not have the facilities of going to a large city and get them treated in a specialty hospital. So that is first. The second thing what you mentioned was very interesting about the collaboration between the AI solution and the physicians. So right now, with this, the workload of the physician is going to get reduced, and they're only going to see a filtered view which has been cleared, take a double check and see how it is going to happen. So what we are effectively saying is that AI is augmenting the day-to-day operations of the doctor. It's not going to replace any job. Anyways, we have got a large number of people who are going to be needed. It is actually going to make them much more effective and productive going forward. So these will be the couple of takeaways from me, Rajiv. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now, when we are talking about this very interesting use case, we also have with us Sreeji. From your perspective, I know you have just mentioned that you started a diagnostic care as well, but from your perspective, pharmaceutical is also a sector which is very, very critical for India. We are considered as the country which provides medicines and vaccination to the rest of the world. So here we are talking about a very, very large scale use and stakeholder base of this particular sector. So I would invite you to kind of share your thoughts in terms of what are the use cases, what kind of benefits, what examples you have seen yourself, and give your experience in this space. So over to you, Sreeji.
Right. Thanks, Sudipta. And as Rajiv was saying, AI, I'll start from where he has left off. There is always this thought that AI is going to replace people and jobs and everything. I think the sweet spot in terms of the success of AI lies in that collaboration between technology and people. Okay, and alleviating the people from doing the repetitive tasks, or which they don't need to. I mean, they should use their knowledge, their experience, their inferences to really take those decisions and take those course corrections, so that the outcome is impacted positively, whether it is for the patient, whether it is for a production line, whether it is for sales rep on the field, whichever scenario we are thinking of. So if I look at the use cases in a typical pharma kind of world that you will see, the obvious one that most of the pharma companies looks at is the manufacturing and the quality processes. There are manufacturing lines, there are quality control procedures, there are labs running different tests. How do we improve the outcome of those? So the philosophical change that is happening is from more production to more productivity. And more productivity really directly contributes to more production outcome as well, right? Now, the use cases that we are seeing are the obvious ones, again, like yield optimization, throughput improvement. And how do you do that? It doesn't happen by magic. So that's where the challenge starts. Have you digitalized your lines? Do you have your product quality attributes coming in a digital way? Do you have the parameters around that, like temperature or velocity, or the environmental factors around that, which is contributing indirectly to the product quality as well, and the efficiency of the lines, or the motors, and everything else that contributes. So the digitalization of that data is actually the prerequisite to make this happen. Now, when we start this journey, you will see some of it is digitalized, rest is not. And that's where the challenge starts. So it's a heavy investment journey to start with, and then people start thinking, okay, why such a heavy investment for such a small return that we are getting, right? And that is the other perspective that we have to understand. This is the initial phase of the journey. The actual payout comes, with the scale, with the multiple applications that we will have. Now, if I look at the sales and marketing side, we also have similar scenarios. Like we have a respiratory device that we use, which is used for different treatments of asthma and COPD and things like that. The dosage monitoring, the angle of that, using the gyro device to measure the effectiveness. If somebody has missed it, alerting them to make sure it's being done. Alerting the caregiver to take any support actions if it's an old age patient. So in the front end, in terms of the caregiving, also there are multiple applications that we are looking at. Now, other than the data analytics side, there is also digital stuff that we are doing at, AR, VR, digital twins, to look at how do we simulate things, not on the line itself, but in a digital world, to see what the outcome could be before you go and apply it on the line, right? And so on and so forth. I can keep going. Preventive maintenance is another one where AR, VR becomes a huge enabler to have that standardized, repeatable way of maintaining the lines. So it's a very exciting time, and the pharma industry has been a little bit of a laggard as far as technology is concerned, but it's fast catching up.
No, thank you, Sreeji. I think a couple of points which you mentioned, which is kind of fairly critical. One, what you mentioned is the fact that you need core processes to be digitized, so that you have the data for which you are going to use for furthering any development in the AI space. And the second piece is that trying it out first in the virtual world, which is the digital twin, before making it happen in the real world. And this is something which, Rajiv, you also mentioned about the POC, that you kind of do a pilot and a POC before you kind of roll it out to a much wider audience. So Rajiv, wanted to understand from you that some of the fears which we already have about not understanding what the solution is doing, or the fact that whether this will actually happen. So what has been your experience in terms of building that trust and also ensuring that people actually use it and they get benefited in terms of the applicability of the AI system?
Sure. So, we keep saying that there is a resistance, there is a change management, but irrespective of industry vertical and irrespective of app or system or solution, I think what is in it for me, if that's like known, it helps a lot. So in healthcare, apart from the two factors which you mentioned, there is another two dimensions. One is the timely uh, result and the quality of the result. If anything get delayed, I think it will impact the health care treatment plan. So in this particular case, like in this example of a van having an X-ray algorithm, people realize that I'll get a timely result, I'll get a quality result, because quality result was tested for more than 9-10 months for validating the complete algorithm. So what we realize is that, first of all, the data set has to be very huge and large, which is nothing very special for healthcare, but also there for each and every industry. Second thing which we realize is that a lot of I think internal struggle was there within, and very rightly, that who owns this information, uh, whether it's owned by patient, owned by doctor, owned by hospital, owned by state government. Nobody, then we realize that to make the algorithm perfect, you ensure that patient demographics are not disclosed, and still store it and have it machine learned. Third aspect, according to me, was with respect to skill. Skill is not just the programming part. Programming part, we were able to crack it fairly in time, but bringing clinicians, bringing physicians. When I say clinician, physician is one, and the radiologist is one part, because they all have to agree on what the probable outcome is going to look like. So this permutation combination, and I have multiple such examples where we are doing something, and this collaboration, because of the skill availability between doctors, radiologists, OT technicians, and data scientists and IT team is very, very important. The skill, according to me, once it comes into picture, people will start realizing, yes, there is something which is coming out. So these are some of the challenges which are common to any industry. But for healthcare, the biggest challenge is that there is a zero tolerance for critical care parts, especially when it comes to ICU, which is a critical care, or OTs, and so on and so forth. So that's what my impression or perception is about the healthcare and AI.
No, absolutely, and I think this is absolutely very, very appropriate that it is important that there is this quality which has to be maintained in terms of the accuracy of the result, and the timeliness anyways will be critical anyways, and that would require a good amount of data set which needs to be used for training such deep learning AI based models, and that has to be tested well. And then the fact that people need to be comfortable using it, the way you mentioned, Rajiv, about the physicians and the clinicians, whether they will be able to use it properly in the right way is going to be critical. So taking this point a little forward, Sreeji, you did mention about the fact that pharma has been a bit of a taken a bit of a backseat in the past in these areas. So hence, what has been your experience, or what has been the industry trends in terms of bringing such digital interventions to the fore, and are there any specific learnings which you may want to share with our audience?
Yeah, no. So I mean, there were thoughts and discussions quite a bit for almost like 4 to 5 years now. But I have to say, the last 2 years where everything went digital helped us as much as any other industry. And, it really became a mainstream strategy. So as a leadership in the company, we wanted to go after this. And that has been a clear program level, sponsorship that we have created. And one other simple thing that we do is that we don't start anything as a technology initiative or IT initiative. It is always a business initiative. So when we start the manufacturing oriented initiative, the main sponsor is the manufacturing head. If it's a sales and marketing, it's a business head, and that's one of the biggest learning, because that half of the battle in terms of adoption is won if you do that, and if they are the ones who is driving the program, the idea generation, what needs to be done, how do you take it to the market, which outcomes do you want to drive, which KPIs do you want to track, that is one huge learning. So I consistently apply this across all the programs, not just AI programs, any other programs as well. Now, the other side of, from to your question, you either do it or, really seriously fall behind. That is a scenario now, right? So you have to grab that opportunity with both hands. And you cannot be, if you're a large player in the market, especially, you cannot be just using the traditional methodologies to further our ambitions in this market. So I think integrated approach, as Rajiv also said, if that can be taken, then it is about actually defining what needs to be done, what kind of skills, what kind of algorithms to be applied, how do you measure the outcome, and also realizing probably early enough, okay, this actually is not working, let us stop. If you're convinced that this particular use case that you're driving, we have had, we started with 25 use cases, we are currently around 20 use cases that we're driving. 5 use cases, quickly we, in about 3 to 4 months, we said, okay, this is not the right thing to follow up on. So I think this kind of honest approach and in a sponsored approach with business integrated into it fully is absolutely crucial.
No, fantastic. I think, a couple of things which I kind of wanted to call out, and thank you, Sreeji, for sharing that, is to have a governance and a program to be managed across the organization, so that it is not just something which somebody is doing in a spare time. There has to be a senior involvement or a sponsorship at the highest level to make things happen. And also the fact that, we should not be afraid of failures, if at all there are any. Because this could be uncharted for many organizations as they are embarking on their journey, and hence failing fast probably is better than not even trying. and then when you fail, you also learn what you need to do differently as well. So I think this has been a very fascinating conversation, and I would say that we touched upon the aspects of different use cases. We also looked at what are some of the benefits which can come in from an organizational perspective, and the scale of the benefit is unprecedented. As Rajiv said, that this could not have even been done without the aid of such digital interventions in the past. So we are not thinking incrementally, we are actually thinking in terms of a step change or a leap in terms of what we want to do in the future. And I think that is what the promise of an AI-based solution holds for us. Probably the only limitation will be our own ability to innovate and our ability to drive and adopt that change and take benefit from this technology, which is now very much accessible and possible for us to achieve. So with that note, thank you very much. I'm sure we could have chatted for far longer, but we do have to keep the time in mind. And thank you for your valuable time and a fascinating conversation, very content driven. And I hope our audience have also benefited from this conversation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sudipta.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Sreeji.
you very much. Thanks, Rajiv. Thanks, Sudipta. Thank you.
Well, artificial intelligence has definitely helped in analyzing complex clinical data into meaningful information for better clinical decisions and also improving the overall patient outcomes. And in some cases, we would be right in saying that it has even helped in early detection of the life-threatening diseases as well. Thank you very much to the three experts for sparing time and speaking to us at #ETBTS. It means a lot. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, everyone, of course, while we can see your footprints, exploring everything that's curated for you, it's also right now time for a specially crafted session, I should say. We've titled it very beautifully as the Short Tech Stories. So we'll be right back. I'll just loop in our next speaker. Just stay tuned, please.